The canvas stretched before Valentina like a portal to another world, splashes of midnight blue and gold catching the dim light of her cramped studio apartment. At 2 a.m., most of the city slept, but she was alive in these quiet hours, her brush dancing across the surface with desperate precision. Paint smudged her fingers, streaked her old college t-shirt, and somehow found its way into her dark hair that escaped its messy bun. Val? Seriously? It's fucking 2 in the morning. Connor's voice cut through her creative trance like a blade. She didn't turn around, knowing she'd see that familiar look of disgust mixed with exhaustion that had become his default expression whenever he looked at her lately. Instead, she dipped her brush in cerulean blue, adding depth to what would become her masterpiece, though neither of them knew it yet. Almost done, she whispered, her voice hoarse from hours of silent concentration. You said that 3 hours ago. The bed creaked as Connor sat up, his frustration palpable in the small space they'd shared for 2 years. Look at this place, Val. Look at us. She finally turned, taking in their reality with fresh eyes. Canvases leaned against every wall. Some finished, others abandoned mid-creation. Tubes of paint cluttered the kitchen counter next to unpaid bills. Their mattress sat directly on the floor because they couldn't afford a bed frame. Connor's business clothes hung wrinkled on a chair, the same suit he'd worn to 3 job interviews this week. I know things are tight, but... Tight? Connor laughed, the sound bitter and hollow. Val, we had ramen for dinner. Again. I'm wearing the same shirt I wore yesterday because we can't afford laundry, and you're up all night playing with paints, like some teenager. Heat flushed her cheeks. This isn't playing, Connor, this is my career. My art. Your art doesn't pay rent. He stood now, his tall frame imposing in the small space. When was the last time you sold something? Really sold something for more than $20? The question hit like a physical blow because they both knew the answer. 6 months. It had been 6 months since her last real sale, and even that had barely covered groceries for a week. These things take time, she said, hating how small her voice sounded. Every successful artist struggles at first. Georgia O'Keeffe, Frida Kahlo. They're dead, Val. Connor's voice rose, and she wondered if the neighbors could hear. Dead artists whose work became valuable after they were gone. Is that your, plan? To be discovered posthumously? Tears stung her eyes, but she blinked them back. She'd learned not to cry in front of him anymore. It only made him angrier. I just need more time. Time for what? To keep living in this fantasy? He gestured wildly at her paintings. Look around. This isn't romantic anymore. We're not struggling artists in Paris. We're broke 20-somethings in a shitty apartment. And I'm tired of pretending your hobby is going to save us. It's not a hobby, she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction now. Connor moved closer, his presence overwhelming. For a moment, she remembered when that closeness meant comfort, safety, passion. When had his touch become a source of anxiety, instead of desire? Get a real job, Valentina, please. For us. The silence stretched between them like a chasm. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance, and she thought about all the emergencies happening in the world, while hers unfolded and whispered. Arguments and dying dreams. This is real to me, she finally said. Connor stared at her for a long moment, something dying in his eyes. Then I guess we're done. 3 months after Connor walked out of their apartment and her life, Valentina had learned to find peace in solitude. The silence no longer felt oppressive, it felt like possibility. She'd moved to an even smaller studio, but this one had better light, and that made all the difference. The morning sun streaming through the large windows made her paintings come alive in ways the old apartment's harsh fluorescent bulbs never could. She was arranging her latest series, abstract pieces inspired by emotional healing, when the gallery door chimed. Valentina looked up from her work to see a man in his early 30s studying her paintings with genuine interest. Unlike the casual browsers who usually wandered in, he moved with purpose, his dark eyes analyzing each brushstroke. These are extraordinary, he said, his voice carrying a slight Italian accent that made her stomach flutter unexpectedly. The way you've captured transformation, It's like watching a phoenix rise. Heat crept up her neck. Thank you. I'm still figuring them out, honestly. Dante Moretti, he said, extending his hand. When she took it, his fingers were warm, calloused in a way that suggested he worked with his hands too. I own a gallery, downtown. Been looking for fresh talent. Valentina Santos. She held his gaze longer than necessary, something electric passing between them. You really think they're good? I think they're revolutionary. He stepped closer to study a painting she'd titled Breaking Chains. Swirls of deep purple breaking into brilliant gold. This one especially. There's pain here, but also hope. It tells a story. For the first time in months, Valentina felt truly seen, not judged, not dismissed, but understood. It's about leaving behind people who don't believe in your dreams. Ah, Dante nodded knowingly. I know that story well. My family wanted me to be a lawyer like my father. But I saw beauty in things others called worthless. Sometimes the people closest to us are the ones who see our potential least clearly. They talked for hours about art, about dreams, about the courage it takes to bet everything on something intangible. When Dante finally had to leave, he placed his business card on her easel with deliberate care. Think about showing with me, Valentina. Not because I'm trying to save you, but because I believe the world needs to see what you're creating. That night she called him. Not about business, but because she couldn't stop thinking about the way he'd looked at her work, like it mattered. Like she mattered. Their first official date was unconventional. Dante took her to an abandoned warehouse where local artists gathered for underground showings. The space thrummed with creativity and rebellion, exactly the opposite of the stuffy gallery world she'd imagined. This is where real art lives, he whispered in her ear as they walked through installations that challenged every convention, before it gets sanitized for collectors. When he took her hand to guide her through the crowded space, she didn't pull away. His touch felt different from Connor's, respectful, patient, electric without being demanding. They ended up on the warehouse roof, sharing cheap wine and looking out over the city lights. Tell me about him, Dante said quietly. The one who made you paint with such beautiful rage? Connor. The name felt foreign on her lips now. He wanted me to be practical, safe, small. She turned to face Dante fully. What about you? What do you want? I want to see you succeed because you're brilliant, not because it reflects well on me. His hand traced her cheek gently. I want to support your dreams, not reshape them. When he kissed her, it was nothing like the possessive, demanding kisses she'd grown used to. This was worship, appreciation, a promise of partnership rather than ownership. Later, in her studio apartment, they made love with a tenderness that healed parts of her she hadn't realized were broken. Dante traced the paint stains on her fingers, like they were precious, whispered about her strength against her skin, made her feel like an artist and a woman simultaneously rather than being forced to choose. Your ex was an idiot, he murmured against her collarbone afterward. But maybe I should thank him. If he'd been smart enough to cherish you, I never would have found you. The next morning brought unexpected news. A photo of her breaking chains. Painting, which she'd posted online months ago, had been shared by a popular lifestyle influencer. Her phone buzzed constantly with notifications. People wanting to buy prints, asking about originals, requesting commissions. This is just the beginning, Dante said, reading the messages over her shoulder. Are you ready? Valentina looked at her easel, at the man who believed in her dreams, at the morning light making everything possible. I've been ready my whole life. 6 months later, Valentina's name was everywhere. What started as viral social media shares had snowballed into features in art magazines, celebrity endorsements, and a waiting list for her original pieces that stretched 3 months out. The transformation felt surreal. One day she was eating ramen. The next she was fielding calls from collectors willing to pay 5 figures for her work. The pinnacle came when Miranda Chen, the A-list actress, posted herself in front of one of Valentina's paintings with the caption, "This artist captures the soul of transformation. Everyone needs to see her work." Within hours, Valentina's website crashed from traffic. "We need to talk about a solo show," Dante said, finding her in his gallery where she'd been hiding from the chaos, painting in the back room he'd given her as a studio. "The demand is insane, Val. I've got collectors flying in from London, Tokyo, New York." She set down her brush, still struggling to believe this was real. "A year ago, Connor told me to get a real job. And now you're about to become the youngest artist to have a solo show at my gallery." Dante pulled her into his arms, spinning her around until she laughed. When he set her down, his expression grew serious. "There's something else." He dropped to one knee right there among the paint fumes and canvases, pulling out a vintage ring with a stone the color of her favorite ultramarine blue. "Valentina Santos, you've taught me that loving someone means believing in their dreams, not trying to change them. Will you marry me?" Through tears of joy, she whispered yes, and when he slipped the ring on her paint-stained finger, she knew she'd never felt so perfectly herself. The engagement news broke just as her solo show opened. The gallery was packed with celebrities, collectors, and critics. Valentina wore a flowing black dress that showed off her engagement ring and the small paint stain on her wrist she'd forgotten to scrub off, a detail that somehow made all the fashion blogs. "Ladies and gentlemen," Dante announced to the crowd, "I present Valentina Santos, Rising Phoenix." The centerpiece was a massive canvas she'd painted during those dark months after Connor left, a woman breaking free from chains that transformed into golden wings. The plaque beside it read, "For everyone who was told to dream smaller." That's when she saw him. Connor stood near the back, looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit, his eyes fixed on her success with an expression she couldn't quite read. He'd lost weight, and there was something desperate in his posture that made her stomach clench with unwanted sympathy. "Congratulations," he said when the crowd thinned and he finally approached. "I always knew you were talented." The lie sat between them like a third person. Dante appeared at her side, protective but not possessive, his hand warm on her lower back. "Connor." She kept her voice steady. "What are you doing here?" "I wanted to apologize, and to ask." He glanced around at the red dots marking sold paintings, at the reporters taking her photo, at the life she'd built without him. "I was wondering if we could talk. Maybe get coffee sometime." "No." The word came out cleaner than she expected. "I'm engaged now, Connor. And even if I weren't, we have nothing to talk about." "Val, come on. We had something real. We had something toxic," she corrected, and saying it felt like shedding the last piece of her old skin. "You made me feel small. Dante makes me feel infinite." Connor's face flushed red. "You think this pretty boy actually loves you? He just wants to profit off your success. I loved you when you had nothing." "No," Valentina said quietly, and she felt Dante's pride radiating behind her. "You loved having someone you could control when I had nothing. There's a difference." As Connor stormed out, she turned to Dante. "How do you feel about getting married in Italy? I want our wedding to be as far from my past as possible." "I feel like I'm the luckiest man alive," he said, kissing her temple. "And I know a perfect vineyard in Tuscany." Later that night, in their new apartment, a loft with floor-to-ceiling windows and natural light that made her paintings sing, they celebrated, with champagne and passion that felt like coming home and adventure all at once. "I sold everything tonight," she whispered against his chest afterward. "Every single piece." "Just the beginning, amore," Dante murmured, his hands tracing patterns on her bare skin like she was his own work of art. "Tomorrow we start building your empire." As she drifted off to sleep, Valentina thought about the girl who used to paint in a cramped apartment, afraid to dream too big. That girl would never recognize the woman she'd become, successful, loved, unbreakable. The phoenix had truly risen. The Tuscan vineyard wedding was everything Connor's vision of their future had never been. Abundant, joyful, and unapologetically artistic. Valentina wore a dress she'd designed herself, painted with watercolor florals that looked like they were growing up from the hem. Dante cried when he saw her walking down the aisle between ancient olive trees. and later whispered in her ear during their first dance that she was more beautiful than any masterpiece. 2 years into marriage, their love had deepened into something unshakable. They worked together seamlessly, Dante handling the business side while Valentina created, both of them building something bigger than either could have achieved alone. Their morning routine was sacred: coffee in bed while reviewing emails, Valentina sketching ideas on napkins while Dante planned gallery expansions. "I'm pregnant," she announced one morning, showing him the test with trembling hands. His joy was immediate and overwhelming, lifting her off her feet and spinning her around their sun-drenched kitchen. "A little artist," he whispered, placing his hand on her still flat stomach. "She'll be perfect." "She?" Valentina laughed. "Father's intuition," Dante grinned. "She'll have your eyes and your talent." Pregnancy didn't slow Valentina down. It inspired her. Her maternal series, painted while carrying their daughter Isabella, broke auction records. The pieces captured the raw beauty of creation, the fierce protection of motherhood, the way love could multiply infinitely without diminishing. By Isabella's first birthday, Valentina's brand had expanded beyond paintings. Her designs graced everything from luxury handbags to home decor lines. Major fashion houses competed for collaborations. Her digital art NFTs sold for hundreds of thousands. The cramped apartment girl had become a multi-million-dollar empire. "Forbes wants to interview you," Dante said, reading emails while Isabella played at their feet in their Manhattan penthouse. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, Central Park stretched out like a green canvas. "They're doing a piece on self-made women entrepreneurs under 30. 30 feels ancient," Valentina laughed. But she was proud of what they'd built. Every success felt sweeter because Dante celebrated it as genuinely as she did, never threatened by her achievements, always pushing her to dream bigger. The interview went viral, particularly her quote, "I'm grateful to everyone who doubted me. They forced me to believe in myself harder than I might have otherwise." That night, Connor called. She almost didn't answer the unknown number, but something made her pick up. "I saw the Forbes article." His voice was different, smaller, defeated. "You look happy." "I am happy," she said simply. Dante looked up from where he was reading Isabella a bedtime story, eyebrows raised in question. She mouthed "Connor" and watched understanding cross his features. "I made a mistake, Val. Leaving you. I've been thinking about it for years and—" "Connor, stop." She walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "I'm married. I have a daughter. I have a life that I love." "I know, but maybe." "There's no maybe. There's no alternate universe where we work out. You didn't believe in me when belief was all I needed. Dante saw my potential before I did." "I'm sorry," Connor said, and she heard genuine pain in his voice. "I'm working at a call center now, living with roommates. I see your success everywhere and I wonder what would have happened if I'd been different." For a moment, Valentina felt genuine pity for him, but it passed quickly, replaced by gratitude for the path that led her here. "I hope you find happiness, Connor, but it was never going to be with me." After hanging up, she joined Dante and Isabella in the nursery. Their daughter was asleep in Dante's arms, and the sight made her heart swell with the kind of love she'd never imagined possible. "Everything okay?" Dante whispered. "Perfect," she said, and meant it. "He was part of my origin story, but you're my happily ever after." 3 years later, when Isabella was 4 and their son Marco was 2, Valentina's net worth crossed the billion-dollar mark. The celebration was intimate, just family in their Hamptons house, the children playing in the garden while she and Dante watched the sunset paint the sky in colors that reminded her why she'd fallen in love with art in the first place. "Remember when you couldn't afford ramen?" Dante teased, refilling her wine glass. "Remember when you took a chance on a heartbroken girl with paint in her hair?" "Best business decision I ever made," he said, kissing her temple. "Though technically, falling in love with you was personal, not business." As Isabella ran toward them with a flower crown she'd made, Valentina realized this was what success actually looked like. Not the magazine covers or auction records, but this moment, surrounded by people who loved her for exactly who she was. The empire was just the beginning. The family was everything. The International Arts and Innovation Gala was being called the event of the decade. Held at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, it honored visionaries who'd transformed creative industries. Valentina's portrait, a stunning oil painting by contemporary master Elena Rodriguez, dominated the main hall, her fierce eyes seeming to follow visitors as they moved through the space. At 35, Valentina had achieved what most artists only dream of: a permanent collection at MoMA, a fashion empire that employed thousands and a net worth that made her one of the youngest billionaires in the world. But tonight, surrounded by her family in their private VIP section, she felt most proud of the woman she'd become. Isabella, now 9, wore a dress designed from one of her mother's paintings, a piece called Future Dreams that had been Valentina's gift to her daughter's artistic ambitions. 7-year-old Marco fidgeted in his little tuxedo, more interested in the museum's dinosaur exhibit than his mother's accolades. Dante, distinguished with silver threading through his dark hair, held 3-year-old Sophia, who'd fallen asleep against his shoulder. "Ladies and gentlemen," the presenter announced, "please welcome tonight's Lifetime Achievement in Innovation Award recipient, Valentina Santos Moretti." The standing ovation was thunderous. As Valentina walked to the podium, her designer gown flowing like liquid gold, she spotted him in the audience. Connor, 40 now and showing his age, sat alone near the back, his eyes fixed on her with a mixture of regret and fascination. She'd known he might come. The event was public, and her assistant had warned her that several media outlets had mentioned his attempts to get interviews about the woman who got away. But seeing him there, while her children watched her accept recognition for everything he'd told her to abandon, felt like the universe completing a circle. 10 years ago, Valentina began, her voice clear and confident. Someone told me to get a real job, to stop wasting time on impossible dreams. The audience chuckled, many knowing the story that had become legend in entrepreneurial circles. Tonight I want to thank that person wherever he is. Her eyes found Connor's across the crowded room. He shifted uncomfortably but couldn't look away. Because doubt, when it comes from someone who claims to love you, forces a choice. You can either shrink to fit their vision of who you should be, or you can grow so large that their limitations can no longer contain you. The applause began building. I chose to grow. She spoke about resilience, about surrounding yourself with people who see your potential, about the difference between love that diminishes and love that elevates. When she mentioned Dante and their children, the camera caught his emotional smile, Sophia now awake and waving at her mother. To every artist, dreamer, and visionary watching tonight, your dreams are not too big. The right people will celebrate them, not shrink them. And sometimes, the greatest gift someone can give you is showing you exactly what you don't want to settle for. After the ceremony, the private after-party was held at their penthouse. Industry leaders, celebrities, and close friends mingled on the terrace overlooking Central Park. Valentina was accepting congratulations from the mayor when her assistant approached discreetly. "Mrs. Moretti, there's someone asking to see you, says he's an old friend." "Connor Walsh?" Dante appeared at her side immediately, protective instincts activated. "Want me to handle it?" "No," Valentina said, surprising herself with how calm she felt. "I'll talk to him, but stay close." Connor waited in her private office, looking small among her awards and family photos. Up close, the years had been harder on him. His hair was thinning, his face lined with the kind of stress that comes from missed opportunities and regret. "Congratulations," he said quietly. The speech it was about me, wasn't it? Parts of it. Valentina remained standing, maintaining the power dynamic. "What do you want, Connor?" "To apologize, really apologize, and to ask." He swallowed hard. "I've been struggling, Val. Really struggling. I wondered if maybe, given your success, you might consider—" "No." The word was gentle but absolute. "I won't give you money, Connor, and I won't give you access to my life. I'm not asking for access. Just help. I saw what you built and I thought, you thought you could cash in on abandoning me? Her voice remained steady, but steel ran underneath. You had a chance to build this with me. You chose to tear me down instead. Connor's face crumpled. I was scared, okay? You were so talented and I was just ordinary. I thought if I could make you ordinary too, we'd be even. And now I see that I gave up the most extraordinary woman I'll ever know because I was too insecure to deserve her. For a moment, Valentina felt the ghost of who she used to be. The girl who would have comforted him, who would have minimized her own success to make him feel better. But that girl was gone, replaced by a woman who understood her worth. I forgive you, Connor. Not for you, but for me. Carrying anger would only diminish the joy I've found. She moved toward the door. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It doesn't mean I owe you anything, it just means I'm free. As security escorted him out, Valentina returned to her family. Isabella was showing off her art skills to impressed guests while Marco and Sophia played hide-and-seek among the adults. Dante wrapped his arms around her from behind. How do you feel? He whispered. Grateful, she said, leaning back against his solid warmth. For all of it, even him, looking out at the city lights, at her children playing, at the life she'd painted from nothing, Valentina Santos Moretti smiled. The girl who'd been told to dream smaller had built a world where dreaming itself was limitless. And that was the greatest masterpiece of all.